Hey, welcome along to this online Arise Care resource. We're so grateful that you joined us here today, and we're so excited because today we're going to be learning about well-being and mental health. We're so honored to have the one and only Richard Black sharing with us today. So make sure you find a comfy seat, get ready to take some notes, and enjoy this content.
You see, as a counsellor, I work with people who may struggle with different emotions. There may be anxiety, depression, anger. And what I find with the people that I work with, the people that my team work with, but also with the people out in the general public, is that when we start to talk around emotions, the kind of sense that I get from most people is emotions are a mystery. I mean, we know we have them, we know we experience them, we know we go through them, but honestly, they're a kind of mystery. In many ways, it's like the wind, where people will say, look, I don't know where the wind really came from, it comes in, it blows, it moves on, I don't know how long it's going to be here, it just is. That in the same way that you have to endure the wind, or you can enjoy the wind, depending on whether it's an Arctic blast or it's a gentle, warm breeze, that you have to endure it or enjoy it. There's just nothing else that you can do with it. That in many ways, this is how many people feel about their emotions. That the emotions are just there. I may notice my emotion. I don't know how long my emotion's going to be there. And there's not a lot I can do but to endure that emotion or perhaps enjoy it if it's a pleasant emotion. That there's really very little that we can do. At least that's the sense. And so sometimes, just like the wind, the emotions can be a full-on gale, or it might be a very quiet breeze. And our emotions can be very loud inside of us, or they can just float through us very calmly. But there's that sense that they are in many ways a mystery. There's not any sense that I have about why they're fully there, or where they've come from, or what I can do about them. So what I want to look at today with you is really to give you some of the understandings of the building blocks of our emotions so that it will hopefully help you to make far more sense of your own emotional state and your own emotional responses. You know, one of the things that we also know around emotions is that emotions, in many ways, are the sort of things that make us human. Part of being human is that we feel. We experience emotions. And at times there may be emotions that we wish to change, but we wouldn't necessarily want to be without our emotions. Our emotions in many ways serve a very important purpose. And that is that they help the essence of who I am, the core of who I am, this being that I am wrapped in this body. They help the me part to connect with, to engage with, to feel a part of this world in which we live. You see, if I was to ask you, how many people here have ever been on a roller coaster ride? Right, there's quite a few of us. Now, in many ways, when you think about a roller coaster ride, what is it? It's a poorly designed transportation device, isn't it? It takes you from point A all the way back to point A, often. And that's, in one regard, all it is. Now, if we were to scoop out of you all emotions, any sense of feeling, and we were to put you in a roller coaster ride, well, you would go through that experience, you would feel the physical pull of gravity, and then you'd come back to the beginning. And you'd go, well, that seems quite mundane, there's nothing really to it, it wouldn't be anything. But if we put your emotions back in you, if we put your ability to feel, well, now we put you on a roller coaster ride. Now, there's all manner of feelings that may come up. There may be excitement and joy and laughter and hilarity or nausea and physical pain and wondering why you ever did this in the first place. You see, our emotions and our feeling state, one of the things that enables us to do when they're at their best is they enable us to connect with, to experience, to engage with this world around us. And if we didn't have our emotions, it would be very hard to connect with another human being. If we didn't have our emotions, it would be very difficult to connect with the external things, the job, the work, sport, or anything like that. So our emotions are important. They help us to get a sense of what's going on outside of us. Now, of course, when they're at their best, they helped us to feel and to experience reality. They give us a more accurate sense of what's going on around us. But of course, at times, our emotions can seem very out of whack. They can seem quite overwhelming, and they can seem at odds with what's happening in reality. There's a kind of disconnect. Why am I feeling this strongly when the event was only this, we might say? And so I want to look at this with you to get a sense of what's going on and where do our emotions come from and what informs our emotions. So in many ways, what I find is that there are 4 general areas where our emotions come from or that influence us in our feeling emotional state. 4 different areas that certainly overlap and intermingle, but I'm going to talk about them as if they're fully distinguishable from the other, but they're not. We're just going to do that so we can have a closer look at each one. So the first one there is our beliefs and our thoughts. Now, we touched on this in that last session, where looking at what we believe, looking at what we think, causes us to feel a certain way. And see, as you sit here now, I mean, if I was to tell you that what you don't know is that someone has bought a lotto ticket for you, and the numbers are going to match the jackpot tonight. I want you to imagine if sitting there at home is in fact the ticket where you've won, I have no idea what the jackpot is tonight, but where you've won $5 million, $10 million. Now, I just want you to think about that for a second. If that was genuinely true, what kind of emotions, what kind of feelings do you notice start to emerge? There's disbelief, yeah. Relief, excitement. Yeah, relief, excitement. Now, if I was to say to you, if we change it and I said, I'm going to put a belief inside you now, that as you sit here, what you don't realize is that I spoke to everyone else during the lunch break, and they all really dislike you. They really, really dislike you. What would you feel in response to that? Sad? Devastated? Like a deflated balloon? Angry? Yeah. Unique, yeah. Now, if we change that, and I said, no, in fact, sorry, I got it wrong. It wasn't you. That was about somebody else in the room. But everybody else, actually, when they think about you, have heard of you. If they don't know you personally, they have heard of you, and they really like you. And they've actually been looking forward to meeting you. Now, if you genuinely believe that, what do you notice changes in your feeling state? What's that? Relief, yep. What else? Curiosity, yeah. So you see, in that, whether we talk about a lotto ticket or whether we talk about people not liking you or liking you, the only thing that I have given you is a belief, is a thought. That's it. And so when you think certain thoughts, when you believe certain things, there is a corresponding emotional response that happens automatically. It doesn't mean that the belief or the thoughts are correct, accurate, or even helpful. It just means you need to understand that when you think certain thoughts, when you believe certain things, there will be an understandable emotional response because your thoughts and your feelings go hand in hand. And of course, you can get caught in a kind of feedback loop because your brain then listens to what you feel and goes, why am I feeling this way? Oh, that's right, because everyone hates me. And why wouldn't they? And so we get caught into that loop that we then listen to the emotion and then we speak to ourselves. But what we are speaking to ourselves, what we're thinking, what we're believing, then creates the emotion, and around it goes. So the first place to understand of where do our emotions come from, they come from our beliefs and our thoughts. The second place here is they come from our background. Now, what I mean by that is is one of the things that happens as you're growing up, as you experience anything, your brain likes to build on learnt knowledge, on experiences of the past. So every time you encounter an experience, whether it's an uplifting, joyful experience, or it's a traumatic experience, an unpleasant experience, what your brain does is it bundles up that feeling response, and it puts it in the kind of filing cabinet of your mind. And it knows to hold on to that later because you might need that. And then, of course, when you encounter other moments, your brain is going to first of all check, have we ever encountered something like this before? What feeling should we have? And it goes back into the filing cabinet of your mind, and it pulls out feelings from the past and it dumps it on you. And it dumps a sensation that might be a sense of rejection and failure, or it might be a sensation of joy and excitement. Now, that's useful if the feeling that the brain discovers and dumps on you is accurate to the now. But of course, if it's out of step, if it isn't quite right, you can end up feeling something that isn't primarily about what's going on right now, but actually has a whole lot more to do with what you had in your past, with what you had in your background. And we're going to take a closer look at that in a second. The third area of where your feelings come from, it comes from your basic needs. Although I usually refer to them as your deep needs, it's just that I needed everything to begin with a B, and so we call it the basic needs. But you see, your basic needs that we touched on in the first session, only very briefly, your deep needs, these basic needs are a need for significance. Everyone needs to know that they are significant, that their life matters, that it matters whether they're on this planet, it matters whether they live or die. Everyone needs a sense of innocence, that is, that you're not under shame or condemnation. Everyone needs a sense of agency. Now, by that, what I mean is your personal power, your ability to influence the world. And I know that's a slightly odd word that many times people find hard to connect with, but it's the thing that you see that babies would do when you're feeding a baby in the high chair, and then the baby grabs the spoon and starts feeding themselves. That's an expression of agency. I can do this myself. Or when you're running late, and it always seems to be when you're running late, and you want to get your shoes on your child and tie up their shoelaces, and they go, "No, me do it." And you think, "Yeah, all right, honey, that's enough. We can get into the car." That's also an expression of agency. It's your sense of personal power that I can influence this world. The fourth one there is a need for progress. That is that you have purpose in this world and that you are living out that purpose, you're moving towards that purpose, that you're not just stuck in a rut, that you're actually growing, you're becoming, you're achieving, you're attaining. There's a sense of growth and progress in your life. The fifth one is a sense of security. That is that the world around you is both predictable and manageable. You have a general sense as to what's going to happen, and you know you've got the resources to cope with it, whatever that may be. And it's our sense of security that certainly took a hit back with the earthquakes. And people's sense of security can take a hit currently with a COVID environment, and we don't know what the future is going to hold. And the final deep need that we have is a need for belonging. Like I mentioned in the first session, that we all need to know that we are anchored in a network of relationships with people who care for us, love us, support us. And so we've got all of these 6 deep needs. And when the deep need seems to be met, when I carry a sense of that I'm significant, that I'm innocent, that I've got personal power and ability to influence this world, that I'm progressing in life, that I am safe and secure, that I belong and am loved. I mean, when that need feels met, there's a whole bunch of what we might call positive emotions that emerge from that. But when the need doesn't seem to be met, when there is that question mark over the need, well, that can put us in a place of emotional pain. And that's where things can go ugly very quickly inside of us. And so the degree to which there is a sense that our deep need is met or not met, that also has an influence on our emotional state. And the final one there is our biology and our body. And we touched on that again in the first session, that there is influence of the biological factors, the body factors that influence our emotional state. Which is why if we play around with your hormone levels, if we dropped estrogen in your body, estrogen is a mood stabilizer, you will be more prone to feel sad or depressed. If we fill you with adrenaline, you're either more prone to feel excited or anxious. You'll feel an extreme sensation. If we reduce food from your body and your blood sugar level drops, well, then you may notice that you're more irritable, you're more angry, you're more anxious as a result. So when we play around with the biology, it will also cause emotions. So things that are not necessarily in reaction to the environment, but come from your internal biological state. And so that also can produce different sensations, feelings, emotional states within us. So when I put it together, we see that where do our emotions come from? Well, they come from 4 key sources. It's not necessarily the only place our emotions come from, but they come from these 4 key sources. 4 key sources that overlap and intermingle with one another, but if we separate them out, we can say that they come from our beliefs, they come from our background, they come from our basic needs, and they come from our biology. And so when you start to understand that, you can start to examine your own emotional state to reflect on, where is this coming from? Is this accurate, and is this helpful? And so what I'm going to do with this is we're going to go deeper into the dynamics of these 4 influencing factors so that you have a more concrete understanding of some of the key building blocks that influence and contribute to your emotional state. So I'll give you this diagram, which at first look can seem quite confusing. But this is the emotional dynamics diagram that I use to explain all the different emotional states that are going on inside. How is this happening? What is going on? And if we unpack that, we've got a number of key components that let's take a look at one at a time. So the big sort of superset, to use that word, is the mental associations, or what's known as fusion. You see, your brain is working primarily on associations it's made. In other words, it works on previous learning. And so it will build everything based on what it's learnt from the past. Everything that's inside of you that you think, that you feel, is connected to some form of association that your brain has linked together. You see, when you think about it, if you imagine a baby lying in a cot, and as the baby's lying there and they're looking up, and what appears over the cot is the face of mum. Now, as they see that, tell me, what do you think the baby associates with this figure, this one that we call mum? What kinds of things does the baby associate with this person? It'd be what? Safety. What else? Food. Yep. What else? Security. Good. What else? Love. Yeah. What else? Physical touch. Yeah. And with a mum, there would be a sense of safety, nurture, food, generally speaking. And that's when its little arms and legs will start to twitch violently as it sees and gets excited about this face. Now, that's because of experience the child has had to date. Now, it wouldn't necessarily be able to, even if it could speak, name such concepts as love, security. It just knows this face is good things. This face is good for me. And so it reacts in response to that. You know, if you imagine that child is getting older and the child is now just sort of sitting in the living room, and coming towards the child is this fluffy four-legged thing. And the mum and dad point and say, cat, cat. And the child might say cat if it's able to speak, and stroke the cat and like the cat, and there's purring that goes on, and then probably pulls its tail and it runs off. But then the child in the pushchair is out and about, and it sees a fluffy four-legged thing coming towards it. So it goes, cat. And mum and dad go, no, dog. And so what the child now learns is that some fluffy four-legged things are called cats, and some fluffy four-legged things are called dogs. Not all fluffy four-legged things are cats. I mean, can you imagine if the child grew up and believed that all fluffy four-legged things were cats? They'd probably get teased quite violently at school. And so the child needs the distinction. It needs to know that there are different categories of fluffy four-legged things. Now, what can happen with many people in their associations, in one regard, is they still believe that all fluffy four-legged things are cats. Now, what I mean by that is that all men are dangerous, or all women are critical. There can be a sense of an overlap, a generalization that is not accurate, that needs greater distinction. And our associations are there to build on prior learning and to help us. You see, if you imagine there's a young girl, she's 7 years old, and she's in her home and she's cowering because dad is yelling, he's drunk, and he's lashing out. He's being quite violent. Now, for that young girl who's cowering, the things that she would be associating with what's going on with this male in the house, with alcohol, the things that she'd be associating are what? Danger. Yeah, it's not rocket science. There's danger, fear. The things that she would associate to this male figure, to this yelling sound, to this alcohol. Now, for her, in that context, is it an accurate association that this male is dangerous? Yeah, that makes sense. Is it an accurate association that this male with alcohol is dangerous? Yeah, makes sense. That this male yelling is dangerous? Absolutely makes perfect sense. But you see, as she grows up, as she leaves home, as she becomes a young woman, and she starts dating, and let's imagine that she's going out with a lovely guy, but one night, or while they're driving or watching TV, maybe he raises his voice and even starts yelling, but it might be at the TV and the All Blacks because they're behind because of something that Rico did that we won't name. You know, or he's yelling at a person who cut him off in traffic, or maybe he's also yelling at her. But even in that yelling state, what if she starts to associate what she associated from the past? What if we understood about yelling males? Danger. Now, is that an accurate association with now? No. Is it an unpleasant experience that she's going through? Absolutely. But it doesn't necessarily mean that he's a dangerous male. I mean, if he starts yelling at her, then maybe he is. Or also, he meets this lovely guy, and there's one night, and he has a drink, and he has one drink, and there's alcohol in his breath. And what her brain goes is, I know what this means. This means danger. I'm not safe. And she goes, I can't be in a relationship like this. Now, is she in danger? No, not in this context. But does it feel like that? Does it seem like that? It really does. So the brain keeps going back to previous learnt information. And it uses that to help a person understand and feel in the now. Sometimes that's accurate, but other times it's not. And when it's not, if we don't help realign our mind, create a distinction in our mind between that not all fluffy four-legged things are cats, some are cats and some are dogs, then we can get stuck in an emotional or a mental connection that isn't actually appropriate, that isn't accurate into the now. Make sense? And so in this, it's to recognize that in fact we have all manner of associations. You see, when you think about such things as coming up here on the PowerPoint, when you think about chocolate, I mean, what would be your automatic association with chocolate? Just call it out. Utter joy. That's right. Yeah. For some people, it's utter joy. For other people, take it or leave it. For me, I don't necessarily have a sweet tooth. I have a saturated fat tooth. So if it's anything that's deep fried, it's probably the same for me as chocolate is for other people. When you think of the term or of work and work that you're doing, what are some automatic associations when you hear the word work? Don't want to talk about it. Yes, everyone's being very calm and quiet on this one. But the same is true with all of those. That with women, what do you associate with women? Now, for other women, it might be friendship and care. For other women, it might be disagreement, cattiness. Coffee could be utter joy, or coffee could be blah. You know, and the same with family. Family could be warm and fuzzies, or it could be tension and conflict. For some people, ringing someone, utter joy as well. That's great. I get to talk to somebody. For another person, it's absolute terror. Oh no, I've got to call somebody. And on it goes when we think about men and conflict and sex and school. You see, on every key topic, your brain has an association, whether it's accurate or not, that it gives you. And this is also true, and the reason why we'll get bigotry, racism, that will emerge. Because it's not necessarily based on my reaction to this one person, but it's based on my understanding, my association with this people group. And so one of the things we need to realize is that we create our associations, we add misjudgments on whole people group or on a specific person because they're a part of a people group or because of their gender that doesn't apply to them. I remember I was working with one woman, and she gave me permission to share this, and she tells the story of when she said, you know, Richard, I will see the washing that's been done just as a pile of washing on the couch. And she said, and when I see it, I just get angry. I see red. I said, oh, okay, well, let's talk about that. Let's have a look. I said, because tell me where did you learn about, what do you associate with washing? And she told me the story. She said, look, growing up, you know, anytime Dad was angry, he used to push me and my sister into doing chores, into getting this place tidied up, getting this place clean, getting this place under control. And so in one sense, I sort of feel like these chore-based activities, well, I feel bullied into them. I feel like I'm being treated subserviently. She also said, Dad used to have a saying. He said, boys rule. She said, why did Dad say that? He only had daughters. So she said, you know, so when we put this together, I said, so when you see this washing, this creates a sense that you're being bullied into this. This is a chore you have to do. You're subservient, that you're less than anyone else. Yeah, she said, this is one of those pink jobs. I said, no wonder you're feeling angry. I'd feel angry too if I had that kind of association. I said to her, so tell me, why is there all this washing on the couch? Oh, she said, well, there's me, there's my partner, and there's our 2 kids, and, you know, we make a bit of washing. Okay, I said, so because there's a few of you in the home, they're producing this amount of washing. Yeah, she said. Now, I said, this will sound like a bit of a silly question, but answer it me honestly. What do you care about your partner and your kids? I mean, do you love them? Do you like them? I mean, how do you feel about them? She said, oh, no, I adore them. They mean the world to me. So I said, so the reason why there's all this washing is because you've got people in your life, a partner and 2 kids, who you absolutely adore. And this washing is the side effect of those people in your home. Yes, she said. I said, so tell me, though, why would you ever want to fold washing, though? She says, oh, well, you see, it's something that I can do. It's certainly something that I feel like I do as an expression of care and love for my partner and my kids. So I said, so when we put that together, the reason why there's all this washing is because you have your partner, and your 2 kids, and you absolutely adore them, and having all of those people in your life produce a side effect of washing. That this washing is a side effect of having them in your life. And the reason why you would fold this washing is because this is something that you can do as an expression of nurture and care and love for them. Yeah, she said. And I said, so what changes now when we update your association? She goes, actually, I don't mind doing it. It doesn't seem so bad. All we're doing in that is changing the associations. Anytime you notice you're getting stuck, anytime you notice there's difficulty, one thing to check on is, what am I associating with this person, this event, this thing, and see what comes up. Now, inside those mental associations, there's a subset, because the mental associations can be simply cognitive-based associations. In other words, associations that are not based with any kind of feeling per se, they're just an understanding. They're an understanding that to be confident feels like and is associated with arrogance, even though I've never necessarily been an arrogant person. It can be that kind of association. It can be an association that many people have in this world that, like going to church, well, that's just boring, irrelevant, and full of bigots. Now, they may never have been to church, so there's no emotional connection there. There's simply a cognitive understanding. In the same rate that people can have with different ethnicities and people group, that they're dole-bludgers, that they're terrorists, that they're thieves, that they're criminals. And they may never have come across someone of that ethnicity in a personal relationship. So it's not an emotion that they've got that they're connecting with. It's simply a cognitive understanding. But in our associations, there are certain associations that are purely emotional ones. And these are the ones, like I mentioned before, where the brain experiences certain emotions and it puts it into the filing cabinet of your mind. And because it wants to build on this, it builds on the emotions from the past to see if they're accurate now, to help you in the now. Because you can imagine that if a child grew up in a home where hugs were safe and loving, and what the child, out of having a safe, warm, loving hug, puts into the filing cabinet of their mind is that hugs and physical touch are safe, loving, accepting, nurturing, caring. And so when they grow up and they meet that special someone and they're having a hug, and the brain goes, how do we feel about hugs? And goes back and scoops out this feeling and goes, they're nurturing, they're loving, they're accepting, they're safe. And the person melts into the hug of this secure, safe individual. It's an accurate association. And so that's helpful. But you could imagine that if someone grew up where touch and hugs were not safe, that they were dangerous, that they were scary, and that gets put in the filing cabinet of your mind. And then this person grows up and meets a special, certain loved one who is a safe, secure individual. But when they have hugs and the brain goes back to the filing cabinet and pulls out feelings that this is dangerous, that you're not safe, that you're vulnerable, that you're going to be used and abused, well, now the person goes, I just can't do this. And they may say something like, I guess I'm just not a huggy person. I'm just not a touchy person. But again, the emotional experience of the past are not accurate to the now. And so they're at odds. But you see, what happens with our emotional experiences is that the brain picks up the feeling from the past and it dumps it on you now. And because we're human, whatever that emotional experience has been dumped on you, we have a tendency to believe what we feel. So when the feeling gets dumped, we'll side with it and we'll go, yeah, this is wonderful, great, exciting, or we'll go, this is horrible, scary, dangerous, I'm useless. Whatever it is, we will side with it. And you see, here's the thing that most people don't realize. Your brain is listening to you. And what you side with, it knows to make more of. So when you side with the emotion, whatever it is, the brain goes, oh, so this is the correct emotional response. That's great. I'll make sure you feel rejected, useless, inadequate faster than you ever felt, which isn't really what you were wanting. But you see, your brain listens to what you side with, which is good news, which means that we're not fully at the mercy of our emotions and our mood. We teach our brain how to feel. Now, when the feeling gets dumped and we side with it and it is an accurate feeling, well, that's fine. It just creates a stronger connection. We're teaching our brain, this is correct. Please give me more of this feeling. And so sometimes the things that are tripping people up, the things that are preventing people from moving on, is that there are certain feelings in the filing cabinet of their mind that are preventing them, that are terrorizing them. So like we talked about at another point, where you can imagine that if a child at school gets humiliated in front of the class because they were giving a speech and they stuffed up or they hadn't done their homework, the brain stores up that feeling and puts it in the filing cabinet of their mind. And then any time a person goes into any environment that seems to be similar to school, it scoops out the feeling of humiliation and puts it on the person. Anytime someone says, oh yes, hi, what do you do for a living? I'm a teacher. It goes, scoops out that feeling of intimidation and humiliation and dumps it. And we will have the sense, this is accurate about what's going now. Is it? No. It's simply your brain's best guess at how you should feel. But we get to teach the brain what to do with that feeling. And I'll show you a little bit why. You see, in this, when we keep siding with an emotional experience, when we teach our brain this is the right emotion, then a couple of key things emerge. The first thing that emerges is what we would call an automatic emotion. Now, you see, an automatic emotion, when you've sided with a feeling over and over and over again, an automatic emotion is the brain's shortcut to how you should feel. It knows when we come into classroom situations, you just feel humiliated, and it's an easy experience. So when we've had multiple experiences of a certain emotion in certain contexts, it becomes automatic. It becomes like the predictive text on your phone, or at least we had predictive text previously when you had to push them in around the numbers. Now you can choose a word. Although if you've got one of those with a smartphone, an iPhone, and you're dialing away and you're typing in the words, you can inadvertently flick on one of the suggested words. And that can be interesting if you don't read over it again, but you send it off. It's the brain's best guess. It's the brain's predictive text. It's the brain saying, this is what you usually go for, so do you want to go for that way again? So think about the sort of things that you would do regularly. Like if you have employment outside the home and you leave the home and you're driving to work, think about putting yourself in your car, driving to work or on the bus or on your bike. What's the automatic sense that's with you then? Your brain has got used to making that, which could be enjoyment or excitement for work, or all of a sudden you feel tired and drained. Whether it's going to work, going to university, going to school, all of those events that happen regularly have an automatic kind of emotion that go with it. Activities that you do, if you are texting someone or you're ringing someone, there is an automatic emotion that goes with that says, this is just how you always feel. We don't even have to think about it. I don't even have to ask you how to feel. You just feel this way. Now, it's true on those regular moments, but it's also true with those bigger moments. Because when you think about it, like if you were to know that you're going to wake up and it's Christmas morning, what would be the automatic emotion that's with you on any given Christmas morning? Just call it out. What do you think? Excitement? What else? Joy? Great. What else? And anticipation of good things. Now, those are all the positive ones you're sharing. They're also safe to share in a group like this. But excitement, joy, the anticipation of good things, but it can also be one of depression. It can be one of fear. It can be one of anticipating conflict or disappointment from the day. You see, those sort of regular events, the brain has those feelings also as an automatic response. Now, when you think about Christmas Day is just a day. The sun rises, the sun sets, the weather is whatever the weather will be, and there are 24 hours in the same day. It's exactly the same, but the meaning that we take, the experience that we've had from the past, that causes us to have an automatic emotion. And so sometimes the things that are preventing you, the things that you are fearful of or discouraged towards, sometimes there is an automatic emotion there that's unhelpful, that's blocking you. Now, there's also default moods. Now, one of the key differences between an automatic emotion and a default mood is an automatic emotion has a context. When you go off to work, when you're coming home from work, Christmas Day. A default mood has no context. It's just what you feel in the background of your mind continually. You see, if I was to say to you, it's not today, but on another Saturday or a Sunday morning, if you got up and you had nothing you had to do, you weren't necessarily going to see anybody that day, but you just got up and there's no pressure on you, nothing you have to do. Tell me, what are the clothes you know you would throw on when you've got no one to see and nothing to do? What sort of clothes? Just call it out. Stay in your pajamas. There are a few of you who will stay in your pajamas. Okay, great. Someone else? Tracksuit? Great. Yeah, it's the comfy wear. And you see, you know to throw that on or not get out of your pajamas. It's just an easy thing to do. It's just what you do. It's what you would do automatically. It's just your default setting. And you see, it's important to realize that this is also how our brain works, that when we take automatic emotions that have a context and at times dwell on those and they get stronger and stronger, they can become a default mood. And so the default mood is the experience that you have throughout the day, regardless of sometimes when there's something nicer that happens or something that's disappointing that happens, that this is the main emotional state that stays with you. And it could be that that same emotional state is one of depression or anxiety. Or it could be that your emotional state is one of contentment or joy. For me, certainly growing up in the way that I was, I suffered from various forms of depression, I would say, for at least the first 16 to 19 years of my life. And I would have different bouts of depression going forward. I also had what people said, "Oh, Richard, you've got a melancholic disposition." That there was a kind of sadness, of isolation, of loneliness that I carried as a sense as my ongoing state of being. I didn't have to think about it. If I encountered things that gave me a sense of joy, well, that's great, but they were short-lived. And then I'd go back to being depressed or being anxious. There was a baseline that was there. But of course, as I've done some work on myself, as I've found a few tools, now I would say I have a very different default mood. It's one of contentment and confidence. And I'll tell you what, I much prefer living in this default mood than my previous one. You see, in many ways, what is a default mood? And I say this again for understanding this, but in no judgmental way. A default mood is an indulged mood, often. We've marinated in it. We've stayed in it. That it now is becoming just default. Now, the good news about that is that if a default mood has been an indulged mood, then we can begin to teach our brain to indulge and to sit in a different kind of emotional state. You see, to change the language around that, one of the things to understand is that In many ways, when you wake up in the morning, when you get through the morning, the brain has got ready. The brain is there to serve you, to help you, to know what emotion to give you, what feeling state to put you in. And when you wake up in the morning, the brain is right ready with an outfit for you to throw on, like you might throw on a Saturday morning with nothing to do. And so the brain goes, we've got depression ready for you. We've got despondency ready for you. I've got anxiety. You can be really anxious today. It's a great outfit. Now, because you don't think about it, the brain just offers it and you go, yeah, of course, typical. Here it is. It's right here. Just might as well slip it on. And then you'll go through the motions. You know how to wear depression. You know how to wear anxiety. You know how to wear despondency. Or if it's a preferred one, this is one of joy and excitement. You know how to wear it. You don't think about it. You just throw it on. It's automatic. It's this default mood. So it's useful to understand that you can challenge and change the emotional state that's been offered to you. If you don't like the outfit, we can ask the brain that we no longer want that outfit, we want to try a different outfit. I remember I was working with a number of people. I remember one person said, when I wake up in the morning, I have depression on me. I have despondency, and with that, a good dose of anger as well. And also, people know not to talk to me at least until I've had a coffee. And I said, okay, and does that last? She said, yeah, that lasts through most of the day, but I guess there are times later in the day where I just feel better. I said, so this isn't always this way, but it's there for the majority of the time. Yeah. And so your brain is offering this to you, but then throughout the day, occasionally that outfit slips off and you're feeling something different. So I said, so what would you like to feel? If you could choose anything, in this sort of make-believe kind of way. She said, actually, I'd like to feel excited about the day. I said, okay, well, let's look at that. If you think about excitement, do you know what excitement feels like? Yeah, no, I get that. I do know what excitement feels like. If you were to put on excitement for today, tell me, so that we're not fooling, we're not just making believe here, and we're not just getting you to think positively, tell me why would excitement be a legitimate emotion for today, a fair enough emotion? Because I have my children in my life, because I've got work that I'm enjoying, because I've got people I'm going to connect with, because I'm developing a healthy relationship with a certain someone, because. Well, now let's build that, let's strengthen that. And let's realize that when your brain offers you that despondency or that surface level kind of depression, that you can teach your brain, no thanks, I don't want that emotion. I want a different one to put on. Now, you will need to consistently and persistently push that feeling away and put on a different one. You may need to ask the feeling why it's there in the first place and see if that is in any way accurate, because maybe there's a belief in there that also needs to be resolved. But maybe it's time to try different outfits, to understand that you can begin to cultivate a new default mood. As you begin to sit with preferred emotion and why it would be an acceptable emotion to have, and strengthen that, because your brain has simply got caught in a default loop. Now, with that though, there is one other factor that's going on that connects to our emotional associations, that connects to at times our automatic emotions, and when it's really bad, it connects to our default mood. And this is what I refer to as your emotional allergies. Your emotional allergy is the bad boy of your mental and emotional health, and one of the troublemakers of why there can be some hurtful, harmful activity that takes place in your life, and why you're in distress sometimes. You see, emotional allergies, I like this term. It was a term first coined by a woman called Laurie Gordon. And it's talking about difficult, painful emotional experiences. And it relates really well with physical allergies. You see, how many people here have a physical allergy? Okay, there's a few of you. And what are you allergic to? Hay fever? What's that? Food, certain food groups, yeah. Anything else? Anyone else allergic to anything? Cats? Yep. Anything else? Oh, certain textures. I thought you were saying certain teachers. Yeah, so there are a variety of different things that we can be allergic to. And tell me, what do you notice is your body's reaction when it comes in contact with the dust, the pollen, the textures, the cats? What do you notice your body does? Creates a rash? Sneezing? Yeah. It can be mucus time, really, can't it? Yeah. With cats, same sort of thing? Yeah. See, we can have a variety of different allergic reactions, from itching, scratching, sneezing, to full-on anaphylactic shock. You see, my mum is allergic to nuts. Mum is violently allergic to nuts, so that if mum ever came in contact with a nut and her throat began to swell up, she carries an EpiPen around with her so that she can slam it into her side and save her life. But you see, here's the interesting thing about all of those allergens. Be it with a minor allergic reaction or even up to an anaphylactic shock, the substance that you are allergic to is in fact of no danger to your body. What's of danger to your body is your body's reaction to the substance and its overreaction. Because the brain says, I cannot cope with this is too much, we need to expel this substance. But when you think about it, what's the antidote, the cure for a physical allergy, for any kind of allergic reaction? It's an antihistamine, it's an adrenaline shot, it's something to calm down your overreactive immune system so that the substance can pass harmlessly through your body. Because the substance isn't a poison. The substance isn't the problem. Your reaction to the substance is. Now you see, this is also true for us. Let me ask you, how many people here have ever overreacted? Okay, so there's quite a few of you and the rest of you are lying. But what we realize is that one of the reasons why you overreacted was because your brain came close to an emotional allergy, to a feeling, an emotion sense that it said, I cannot cope with this. And so it went into an overreaction or an underfunctioning. And you see, if there are certain emotions that we could put inside of you right now, and we would stand back and we would watch you have a hissy fit. We'd watch you have an absolute core meltdown. But if we scooped that horrible feeling out of you and we put that feeling into somebody else, well, they might go, oh, well, that's not very nice. But they could cope with it. Now, why is that? Because it has a lot to do with when you first or significantly encountered that emotion sensation. And you encountered it in what felt like a traumatic event. Now, that could be a capital T trauma event or a lowercase t trauma. But when your brain believes, I don't have the resources to cope with what's happening right now, it feels traumatic. And so the brain scoops up that feeling and it puts it in the filing cabinet of your mind. And it knows, I can't cope with this. Now, oftentimes it occurs when we're children because everything can feel overwhelming as a child. We've got a child's ability to process information. And so it might be that you grew up with a critical mum or a domineering dad. It might be that you got rejected by friends at school. It might be that you got ripped into by a teacher. Whatever it is, that the brain stores up those horrible, overwhelming emotions and puts it in the filing cabinet of your mind. But it can happen later in life. You know, it can happen when you're an adult to an event that feels traumatic, which is why a number of people got certain emotional allergies with the earthquakes. And so now anytime a truck goes by, they have their own mild panic attack. It can happen though for some people where they say, I recognize it happened when my spouse said to me, I no longer love you, I'm leaving, I found somebody else. And that overwhelming sense of rejection got put in the filing cabinet of the mind. Now it was traumatic, it was too big. And when the brain dumps that feeling from the filing cabinet in the now, again, it feels like we're right back there. It feels too big. It feels overwhelming. So let me show you how this allergy works in action in our life. So in many ways, if you think about these 4 different areas, this is the process that the allergy goes through in short and very quick succession. So the first thing that happens is that something occurs that will trigger your allergy, that will trigger a feeling like rejection, inadequacy, failure, unloved, not listened to, not belonging with, disappointing others, dominated, controlled. The brain knows that when something goes on, it knows to give you this feeling. And this feeling is an absolutely horrible and hideous emotion for you that your brain goes into a crisis response. The fire alarm goes off in your brain, and the brain will move into a crisis response that puts you into either a fight, flight, or freeze response. Have you heard of this before? The fight, flight, or freeze. See, tell me, my friends, what would be a fight emotion? Anger, absolutely. The flight emotion is anxiety, and the freeze emotion is depression. Now, more often than not, but certainly not always, anger, anxiety, and depression are secondary emotions designed to protect you from a feeling you don't want to feel. This is a crisis response. These secondary emotions are designed to be protective emotions inside of you. And because you hate the allergy so much, you will move to that secondary emotion really quickly. You see, anger can feel like it's useful because anger goes, you're not going to push me into this feeling. If I get angry, I can get a sense of power. I can feel empowered again so that I don't feel powerless to this horrible feeling. Although the irony is, when you're angry, you're usually at your most insecure. Because why are you needing to be angry in the first place? Something feels like it's threatening you. Anxiety can feel like it's helping you because it puts on the fire alarm. It says, danger, danger. There's something that could happen, and if it happened, it would be horrible and you couldn't cope. And so anxiety feels like it serves you by putting you on high alert. And so this is the reason why you stay awake at night going over those conversations. Did I say anything dumb? How did I come across? Or you stay awake at night thinking about what you've got on for the next day, thinking, am I going to be able to cope? How will I manage this? Will this be okay? And depression can also feel like it's serving you because depression will try to shut off any feeling. It will numb you. Even though it's a horrible place to be, that kind of numbness feeling, your brain says, is so much better than living in this horrible allergy. Because one of the things I'll often let people know is that numb sensation is not the absence of feeling. It's in fact protection against feeling too much. And so depression can feel like it's serving you. Now, like all allergic reactions, we can have minor allergic reactions or major allergic reactions. So it might be anger, or because you're not that kind of person, you never get angry. You just get irritated or frustrated with other people. Or it could be a full-on extreme version where it's full-on rage. It could be anxiety, or it could be something less. It could be worry. Or it could be something more full-on, like panic. Or it could be depression, or it could be something slightly less of sadness or sorrow, or it could be something more extreme, like absolute despair. But whatever that emotional response there, it will then talk to you from that feeling. So anger says, in whatever goes on in the chatter of your mind, this won't happen. I'm not going to put up with this. I'm not going to be treated this way. Anxiety says, this might happen. Oh no, I'm going to be found out. I'm going to stuff up. I'm going to be caught out. This is all going to go horrible. Depression says, this is happening. There's nothing I can do about it. It's hopeless. I'm powerless. Now, let me ask you, if you were to see somebody who is going through this kind of expression, and whether it's anger, anxiety, or depression, and whatever's going on in their head, tell me, what are some of the behaviors that you see coming from, not you, but maybe the person you came with, but what do you see coming from them when they overreact? What's some overreaction or underfunctioning kinds of behavior? You'd say what? Shouting, yep, shouting, yelling. What else? Crying. Although crying is a physiological response, it becomes a behavioral response if there's a reason behind your crying. In other words, you're using tears to influence another person. And so that's when it can become manipulative. But crying in and of itself is purely a physiological response. Yep. What else? What else might be the behavior? Sulking? Absolutely. And when I sulk and I have my sense of self-pity, it's like a homemade form of nurture. Like there's a big person that comes around me and goes, there, I'll make it all better. They don't understand. And then you realize there is no one else. It's just me. Great. What else? Isolating, yep, moving away, withdrawing, and avoiding are big ones. What else? Ruminating, going over and over and again. And anxiety loves ruminating because anxiety says if you think about it enough, you'll find an answer that you didn't think of before. If you think about it enough, you'll be safe. Although there is no new information, so you find yourself just going over and over. Absolutely. So there's a variety of different potential responses that we have. And, whether it's yelling or name-calling, throwing things, getting aggressive, eating, drinking, or restricting our food and what we take in, perfectionism, placating people, trying to please people. There's all manner of things. We can move into different habits, different addictions. All of those are there. And at times we can look at those behaviors and people can label that as problem behaviors. The thing to understand is none of those, in one sense, are problem behaviors. They are solution behaviors. They're a solution to try to protect you from a feeling that you would hate to feel. So if you want to understand people, one of the things to understand is the allergy is there that's dominating, that's bullying you. And you need to be aware of that because if you're not aware of your allergies that are not about now, but are actually feelings from the filing cabinet of your mind, that when they get triggered, you will assume that this feeling is actually about now when it's not. It comes from another time. And we need to help our brain distinguish why this fluffy four-legged thing is not a cat, but it's a dog. Why do I not need to have that same kind of reactivity in the now? How is my life different and better to when I first experienced this allergy? One of the things I'll ask people when you experience this feeling, this allergy, I said, this will sound like a really strange question, but how old do you feel in that feeling? And they'll say, oh yeah, I feel quite young, 5, 8, 10, 12, whatever it may be. You see, with the allergy, the brain doesn't just dump the feeling, it dumps the feeling as if it was the same time when you experienced it. So when it dumps the feeling, it dumps it with you being the 8-year-old, 10-year-old, 12-year-old, which is why things can seem so overwhelming. And it shuts off your adult resources. But as you reconnect with your actual physical age, with all that you've learned, with all that you've gained, you actually discover that you are more emotionally mature than you were ever before. And the difficulty can be that when that emotional allergy becomes your automatic emotion, there are so many different times when you feel scared and terrified and overwhelmed and anxious and angry. And what's even harder for people is, can you imagine if that emotional allergy, that was a severe emotional allergy of feeling rejected, inadequate, a failure, that became your default mood? Well, now we begin to understand why some people want to escape the pain, because this feels like it's overwhelming and it's forever when it's not. And so as we start to understand our emotions and begin to change our emotions, we need to recognize that we as humans get caught in believing what we're feeling. That if I feel it, that's accurately how things are when it's not. This feeling is simply my brain's best guess at how I should feel. And so as we use those similar tools in the previous session, become aware of what you are feeling. Let the feeling talk to you. But arrest the feeling. Is this helping me or harming me? Where does this feeling even come from? Is it about now or from another time? What am I believing in the feeling? What's the belief in the pain? I'll sometimes ask. And what are the reassurances? What is a different way of seeing or thinking? How can I put on a different outfit? How can I indulge a different mood? How can I see differently from what was? And now start to live it out. But just like I said to you at the end of the last session, these are tools to create greater understanding as to why you feel the way you do. This is to help you in the self-care of you. But if you've got a root canal issue, if you've got a deep trauma-based issue, then again, you're going to need a professional to help you to navigate that so that you're not overwhelmed by it and so you're not just traumatizing yourself further. But if you notice there are certain moods and emotions that are just too big for you, that's okay. That happens to all of us. Reach out for the help that you need. Whether it's calling 1737, whether it's calling up a counselor, a psychologist, talking with your GP. Go get the professional help that you need. But also use these tools that I'm sharing with you now to see what can actually help strengthen your emotional state so that your emotions don't run away from you, but they work to support you.
How good was that? We hope you enjoyed that. Hope you took some notes, some takeaways, and we'll see you back here next week.